Hi everyone, and welcome to the Caridon Weekly. I'm so excited today to have this conversation because, let's be honest, being a landlord in UK right now feels a bit like navigating a minefield between mortgage rate and renters' right bill and everything else going on. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, but that's exactly why we're here today, to talk about something that could make life a lot easier for landlords, the guaranteed rent. I'm joined today by our Group Executive Director, Lora Bencheikh, who's going to break it down for us. Whether you're a seasoned landlord or just dipping your toes in the property market, this is going to be super helpful. So let's dive in. Lora, can you start by explaining what guaranteed rent is and why it's becoming such a big deal for landlords in the UK right now?
Hi, Jameen. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak on this topic, which I'm very passionate about. Why guaranteed rent is becoming very relevant for the landlords in the UK. It shouldn't be a new thing. It has been relevant for many landlords, many savvy landlords, especially portfolio ones, for many years. We've been doing this since 2009. We've got the same landlords that we've been providing guaranteed rent for since that time. A guaranteed rent scheme essentially is a way of providing a landlord with a financial peace of mind by ensuring a fixed rental income, regardless of tenant occupancy or non-payment. This mitigates the risk and admin burdens. Guaranteed rent is very important now due to the upcoming Renters' Rights Bill, which is going to affect every type of tenancy. Some of them in positive ways, not just negative ways, where we don't want to scare landlords into having a guaranteed rent, but we want them to understand the benefits of guaranteed rent and being a responsible landlord.
That's a great overview. What are the key benefits of guaranteed rent? Let's say compared to traditional rental agreement like AST, assured short-hold tenancy.
In a traditional rental agreement, the AST is governed by the Housing Act 1988. With a guaranteed rent, we would have a company let, which is out of the Housing Act. Thereby, the landlord can raise the rents within a 12 months, as long as there's a provision for it in the agreement. We wouldn't have to abide by the Section 21, which is going to be abolished. The landlord would just serve us a notice to quit.
Interesting. Now, one of the biggest concerns for landlord is the risk of tenant default. What happens if a tenant defaults on rent under guaranteed rent scheme? How is that risk managed?
There shouldn't be a default if you pick the right company in the first place. As I said, we've been going for 16 years. We pay out over £1.5 million a month in rents. A landlord who has an issue with a tenant defaulting is a big problem, especially if it's a company let. They may not be part of a redress scheme. So we're part of the Property Ombudsman, Client Money Protect. So a landlord first has to make sure they choose the right guaranteed rent company. The risk is on the guaranteed rent company. So the tenants we sublet to could default, but then that becomes our problem. It doesn't become the problem for the landlord that we're guaranteeing the rent to.
That's reassuring to hear. How does guaranteed rent impact the relationship between landlords and tenants? Does it change the dynamic in any significant way?
Unless you're a very hands-on landlord and all you want to do is be speaking to your tenant day and night about very insignificant things, then the impact is easier, stress-free life. So the agent at the guaranteed rent company, as a Caridon would be, takes all the burden. So we become your tenants in essence. So the only time you need to speak to us is if there's a tenancy, a contract renewal, or if there's a compliance issue that we need to speak about. But on the day-to-day things of tenancies, the landlord would not be dealing with them. So you can have your social life back. So you don't have to be worried about picking up the phone on a Saturday night because the fire alarm's going off, because they're not going to call you, they're going to call someone from Caridon.
That's great to know. You know, with Renters' Rights Bill, there is a lot of uncertainty around tenants' rights and eviction processes. How does guarantee rent offer more stability for landlords?
You're reducing your risk. The Renters' Rights Bill affects the actual tenant, the guaranteed rent company are subletting to. It doesn't affect the actual landlord. So with Caridon's guaranteed rent, we don't just guarantee rent, we're actually making sure that the property is compliant, that we follow the Renters' Rights Bill, which we've got significant training on. We've got experts in the field that have been training us for the last 2 years while this bill is going into Parliament. So we're way ahead of everybody in the business. We have to be like that, because obviously this is our business. renters' rights shouldn't be a negative. They should be a positive way in making the rental industry better for all, better for the tenants and better for the landlords. It's going to be a little bit hard in the beginning to get around the abolishment of the Section 21s. As long as we have good paperwork and governance in place, then it's nothing we should be scared of. We should be embracing it, but it's important that you get the experts in to look after your property.
That's reassuring to hear. For landlords, it's always helpful to hear a real-world example. Can you share some success stories where guaranteed rent has made a significant difference for landlords?
Yeah, so we were approached by a friend of an existing landlord that we had. He didn't have lots of properties. I think he had about 3 properties at the time. He was managing them himself. He had private working tenants there. Everything was all good. He had a period of ill health where he wasn't able to look after the properties properly. He started getting issues with disrepair. The tenant stopped paying because the repairs weren't being done correctly. One of our landlords spoke to him and said, look, I've been working with Caridon for a long time now. Perhaps you could speak to them. We got introduced and we spoke to him, and we found out that he has significant arrears with the tenants weren't paying him. Some of them were for real reasons. They didn't have hot water and things like that, but he didn't have a management company. He used to call them up himself, but this has sort of gone to the wayside when he got ill, and then he started burying his head in the sand because he was worried about the bills coming through. So we spoke with him. We spoke to all the tenants and we said, look, think we can't fix things in one day, but if we want to work together, we want to get the rent back in. If you start paying, at least we can start getting some bills paid and some things done. Otherwise, it's just going to be an eviction and everybody's going to be worse off. So we took over the properties. The tenants were a little bit reluctant in the beginning, not sure, what's going to happen. They were going to pay rent and we're still not going to have hot water. But straight away, we got our own plumbers in, we got our maintenance guys in to fix the basic small things. We made sure that the property was compliant, came to an agreement with the landlord to take over his portfolio of those few properties, started giving him a fixed rent every month, made sure that the mortgage was being paid. So he had to provide to us every month the mortgage statements to make sure that that was the most important thing. And then slowly, the portfolio started stabilising. We signed a 3-year agreement with him initially. He's since renewed, realising that this was the best for him because he didn't have to be hands-on. His health still wasn't great, but it wasn't as bad as it was. And the tenants were happy because they had a person to speak to when there was an issue.
Thank you. Those stories really highlight the value of guaranteed rent. Now, what should landlord look for when choosing a guaranteed rent provider?
A really good question. And for me, it's reputation. Reputation, your track record and your professionalism. You need to look for a company that's been well established, been providing guaranteed rent for a good few years. Like us, we've been doing it for 16 years. You can look on Companies House and see what money comes into their account. You can see how many landlords they're paying every month. As I say, we've been paying £1.5 million out to our landlords for nearly 16 years. We've had the same landlords renew every year. We understand the difference between a guaranteed rent and an insurance-backed scheme, because an insurance-backed scheme, which is what most traditional letting agents who haven't been guaranteed rent agents before, they just provide you with a policy, and that policy isn't the same as a guaranteed rent company, because an insurance policy just covers the rent if the tenants fail to make a payment. If they don't work, for example, if they don't pay the first month's rent, the insurance policy doesn't pay that. You need to make sure that you read the terms and conditions of the contract that you're signing with the guaranteed rent company and what they're providing for that. Is it just an insurance policy, or is it a hands-on rent guarantee with a management that we provide? Our guarantee also manages the property as part of the guarantee scheme. So we have different levels of guarantee schemes. One of them is that we guarantee the rent, we manage the property, and we make sure that the property is compliant with HMO licensing, EPC regulations, understanding fire safety changes. And these extras are something which is very important, that you have to make sure is being looked after from the beginning. Not just it's, oh, here you are, sign this document, you'll be having an insurance policy with small print. So that's very important.
For those who are interested in learning more about Caridon's guaranteed rent, where can they go to get started?
First of all, you can go straight to our website where there'll be a link on the guaranteed rent schemes that we provide and different services that we have. You can follow us on social media, the usual traditional LinkedIn, TikTok and Insta, or I'm happy for you to send emails to me directly. I'm happy to speak about what your current situation is, how we can help. Even if you don't use us for guaranteed rent, I'm always available even just for advice, or I can point you into the right direction of someone that can help you if you're struggling, or if you're not too sure about guaranteed rent and how it can work for you. Happy for you to email me too.
Let's switch gear a bit. How does Caridon Estates assist landlords in navigating the complexity of HMOs and licensing regulations?
HMOs have been a big part of our business for many years. So we own and manage 2,000 properties over London and South East. A big majority of those are HMOs. And those complexities of having those licenses are ever changing. We work with 27 boroughs across London. Each borough has a different licensing scheme. So it can be very complex, but we have a team of experts on site that will know every borough, will know every planner, and will know what the requirements are for each borough. If you've already got a license in place, we'll just make sure that your current license is compliant and that you're following the regulations correctly. We'll probably do a site visit to ensure that what's on the paper is actually what's happening on the HMO. All our staff have monthly update training on HMOs. When you do have a guarantee scheme with us, you're provided with a dedicated portfolio manager that only looks after your properties and inspects your properties. So that HMO becomes their HMO and they're responsible for what goes on in there.
Another pressing issue is the potential impact of rent controls and local authority crackdowns. How does Caridon Estates help landlords deal with these challenges?
Rent control is something that has been spoken about in Parliament for many years. When we first started in 2009, rent control had just finished, actually. I think it was rent controls were in existence until around 2007, 2008. So it isn't something that we're not used to dealing with. But I don't think that we're actually going to go down that route of rent controls. It'd be so difficult to implement with the fixed rents that are in place now and the market rates. So in all honesty, I doubt very much we'll go down that route. In regards to local authority crackdowns, I think that can only be a good thing. This will only remove rogue landlords or landlords that don't want to be compliant. For us, we've had selective licensing, we had mandatory licensing, we've had local council setting the standard schemes. So we're very happy to be part of any scheme to show that we're not afraid to be a good landlord. And we want to make sure that any landlords that we represent and we're providing guaranteed rent for are also in the same mindset as us. So local authority crackdowns are not an issue. They make sure that the industry is regulated.
Looking ahead, how do you see the landscape of property rental evolving over the next 5 to 10 years, especially with these new regulations?
That's a good question. I wish I had a crystal ball that I could look into to give you the answer. I think it's hard to look into the next 5 or 10 years. Immediately, the Renters' Rights Bill is obviously going to make big changes in the tenancy types, evictions, rent increases, the supply of property. So it's going to be a very competitive market with agents. And we have to up our game. Landlords have to be prepared for these changes and not stuck in their ways. They're going to come whether we like it or not. But I think after maybe 1 or 2 years of difficulty, we'll get used to it and we'll have to change with the times. I do think that in 10 years' time, I'm hoping there'll be a lot more supply and less competition and more options for renters on the market where they can afford to rent. But I think we should just embrace the changes because they're happening and make sure that you are aware and understand regulations and changes as they come.
We've covered a lot of ground today, and I think it's clear that guaranteed rent offers a compelling solution for landlords navigating these challenging times. Lora, if there's one thing you want landlords to take away from this conversation about guaranteed rent, what would it be?
The one thing that I would want landlords to take away from this conversation about guaranteed rent would be that guaranteed rent companies, they take a huge risk with the voids, so they're covering the void periods. They're taking a risk on not getting paid. You as a landlord are still getting paid. It's taking a huge risk with our reputation and compliance and ensuring that not only the tenant is happy that we're subletting to, but the landlord is happy. So it's a partnership.
Thank you so much, Lora, for sharing your insights and expertise. It's been an enlightening discussion, and I'm sure our audience has gained valuable knowledge. For those who want to learn more, don't forget to check out Caridon's Guaranteed Rent. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.